Welcome to the Entrepreneurial CEO Podcast, where we dive into the real stories behind building and scaling a business. Each episode, we sit down with CEOs, founders, and leaders to uncover hard-won lessons in leadership, systems, and team building. Listen in each week to learn directly from real business leaders who have been in your shoes, had success, made the mistakes, and all of the messiness that comes with building a business. If you're ready to learn from real-world leaders and gain insights you can apply today, you're in the right place. So let's get started. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, today's guest is Rebecca Fountain, an amazing entrepreneur in the Las Vegas construction industry and the champion for diversity and community impact. She founded KOR Building Group in 2013, growing it into a go-to contractor for some huge projects with the Venetian, the Cosmopolitan, Department of Aviation, and many more. With a career spanning decades in construction and infrastructure, Rebecca has broken barriers in a traditionally male-dominated field, leading large-scale projects and shaping industry standards. As the president of the Nevada Contractors Association, she's been a vocal advocate for fairness, inclusivity, and supporting women-owned businesses. She's built a business with staying power and a really strong reputation. So today we're super excited to dive into her journey, lessons she's learned, and what's next for KOR Building. So Rebecca, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump in. So you built KOR Building Group into a very highly respected firm, worked on some major projects across Vegas. When you first started, did you know it would grow to this level, or did it evolve beyond ways that you anticipated?
I've always had a vision for it to grow and trying not to put a limit to what that could be. But yeah, getting it here, that's been a lot of work. And I actually think it's going to grow bigger than what I've even envisioned in the past, just due to some work that we're doing now with Google and a few other large companies like that.
That's amazing.
What do you do with them right now? What kind of work do you do? Because it sounds like this is different than some of the other things you've done.
Yeah. So, I mean, in initially starting KOR, I did a lot of work in hotels, and we still do work in the hotels. We do work at the airport. Like you see Hudson News everywhere. We do a lot of their remodels. But we've grown significantly, and what we're doing now is we have a 3-year agreement with Google. So we're on their campus. There's a lot I can't really talk about, but that is turning into, it's a lot of tenant improvement kind of work. They're needing to remodel some space into offices or conference rooms. There's a lot of that going on, and there's a lot more going on. And
Yep.
So I'm not privy to give a lot of that information.
That's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I mean, Vegas is booming. We were talking before the show about all the sports teams that are now coming there, which is super exciting. I mean, have you seen an influx with different businesses like Google or corporate partners that are coming in over the past 5-10 years?
Definitely. So using Google and Amazon as an example, in the Henderson space, so, we have different areas in Vegas, so it's not just Las Vegas, but it's all connected. And in the Henderson space, our former mayor, Mayor March, she got Google out here. She was able to get Amazon in this space. So a lot of deal making was done about 8-9 years ago. We have Haas Automation out here. They just broke ground. And so that's expanded a lot of the work that most of us are doing. And I'm sorry, I'm going back to your question. You'll have to tell me what that was again.
No, I was just more curious about the growth in the area. I think about like Austin, Texas, and how that's boomed over the past 10, 15, 20 years. And a lot of large companies went there in a similar way. I think Google, Dell, that helped to really grow in that area. Obviously, the university helps, but it sounds like you're seeing similar growth in Nevada.
I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing, and I think it should have been this way a long time ago, is our stadiums. We brought in the hockey team. We have our Golden Knights are pretty amazing. Brought in the Raiders. I ended up getting appointed by our governor to sit on the Diversity Oversight Committee for the Raiders Stadium build. I'm still sitting on that. And then the A Stadium, that's going, it's in the process of all the approvals, entitlement approvals, things like that. But that's supposed to break ground and be completed. I want to say it was going to be 2027 or 28. I can't remember. I'm also being considered to sit on that diversity committee as well, and that's long-term commitments. So I do a lot with community and with all these bigger builds that we're getting. But it's bringing a lot of, unfortunately, the gambling part is here. But with the stadiums, it's just bringing in a whole new group of people that we didn't get before. They went to every other state. And now it's really taken off here.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just impressed with your community leadership. I always look when I talk to entrepreneurs, I'm always looking to we've learned so much as entrepreneurs. And I think it feels like, to me personally, it's like once you learn so much and you understand about running organizations, you understand about managing people, I feel like it's an obligation to step into the community and lead. And that's what's very impressive about what you're doing in that community.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I got involved really early with the Nevada Contractors Association, which is a chapter of Associated General Contractors of America.
Yeah.
I got involved real early on, and we actually founded the Diversity Construction Council. About 9 years ago. I was the founding member, along with about 5 other people. And it just it took off. The timing was great. It took off. It was time for the recognition of various contractors. And one of the reasons we started that was we didn't have a lot of diversity subcontractors and suppliers here in Las Vegas. We're not that big of a city. We're only 2.8 million or so. So it's not huge like Phoenix or anything like that.
Right.
For sure. But the big concern for major primes was having diverse contractors because of the requirements on the federal side as well as the state government side. So we put together education programs, which brought in these subs that were, basic mom and pop. And as they got educated, their company grew. And now I get to look at some of these companies that I've watched grow, all woman-owned, all, whether you're Black or Hispanic, all diverse all the way around. And now they're being utilized on these major builds that I was just speaking about.
Yeah.
So it's exciting because they couldn't be before because they didn't know how to do the paperwork. They didn't know how to do, it's a lot of paperwork to do that type of work, especially when there's federal or state dollars involved. So I'm proud of that. I don't sit on that. I was chair of that for 3 years, and I don't sit on that anymore. But I also was chair for the president of the Contractors Association, and I retired from that about 2 years ago.
It's pretty incredible. I imagine that's pretty rewarding to see. You help those other businesses and business leaders, and to see their companies grow, partly due to your help is pretty amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it is definitely something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you talk about how KOR Building has grown, obviously, and you say that you anticipate it growing even further due to some of the things you have underway. Like, when you think about some of the challenges or headaches, like, is there one that keeps you up at night that you think about, over the next 12 months, man, we really need to get this right? Like, what are you thinking about a lot these days?
It's probably a few items. One is, it's always, and this is for it doesn't matter what size your company is, cash flow is always an issue.
Yeah.
Growth pattern, because you got to put out before you get back. And sometimes getting back that return on the investment can take a year. So you've got to be able to balance that. Keeping quality staff, qualified staff, I should say. But it's definitely cash flow and then equal to that would be qualified to do the work at a level that I expect anyways, and that any owner would expect in order to grow in the space that I'm growing in, which again is like the Googles, the Amazons, the working in the hotels, working for the state. Those are my areas.
Andrew, can I dig in there for one sec? So
Absolutely.
cash flow, totally getting it, especially in the construction industry. How are things with the state of the economy? And there's a lot of talk of new tariffs. And this morning it's like, okay, we apparently are doubling the tariff for China. Like, how is that impacting you? How is any of that, whether it be tariffs, whether it be immigration, is that impacting your industry, your business in Nevada?
Yeah, it does. It mainly in the material supply. I just had a meeting before this meeting with you guys with our electrical contractor because the price quotes are going up because the materials are going up and they're preparing for additional tariffs before the end of the year. So and then there's lead times on materials. So electrical materials can be 6 to 8 weeks, but back in COVID, it was 6 months to a year.
Right.
But we still have the tariffs that they're anticipating. So they add 25% to all material costs. Well, if you don't have that factored in your bid, or at least a clause indicating that, there's going to be an increase to
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah.
And a lot of states were not allowing that clause in the contract that if they wanted just a hard number, but the project doesn't start for 4 months and your price for your materials doubled, they were making you pay for it. And most contractors said, well, then we don't need to sign. And so then they changed their mind and let us put our clauses in there to why cause us to go under?
Yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah, I'll say. Yeah, good. So that's the benefit of going through COVID is like everybody's a little bit better prepared to not make the mistakes we made back there with materials.
Very true. Because even during COVID, materials, again, not only did the prices increase, there was a shortage, and it took me 9 months just to get a 600 amp panel for one of my projects. That's not a large panel, but it's bigger than a house panel. So in most houses, I should say, but yeah, when you have to wait 6 months and your project's done, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So we don't have that now.
Talk to me about people. Talk to me about hiring and staffing and finding qualified, great people that you trust to deliver the quality service and product that holds up to the KOR Building Group name. Is that a challenge? Do you find that to be particularly even more challenging now? And how do you approach that? Because I think, we work with a lot of companies in the home services category, and man, we hear that all the time that, finding great people is challenging.
It is, and I think it's that way for anyone, any state, any city. It's a challenge. For the longest time, construction was looked at as parents wanted their kids to get college educations. They didn't want them in construction. It was frowned upon. However, in construction, you need a college education for half the kind of work, especially in management, and to be qualified to even do the work. So there's that piece. The way I approach it is I want to make sure, we look at resumes and we pick the ones that have the qualifications to interview. But the number one criteria I have is, are they a good fit personally to this office?
Yep.
Will they go through the hills and valleys with us? Will they get along? Do they have that personality that, if we're joking around the office, are they going to get offended? Construction, you can't get offended. It just doesn't work that way. So I look at attitude, I look at personality, and if I think they're a good fit, then they get a second interview based off of their qualifications. And then that interview is rigorous through, I use my management staff to do those interviews. So
yeah, you just said something so important. I train a bunch of entrepreneurs and we go and, a lot of times we get into this values conversation, which are great, but I'm like, listen, there's probably 3 or 4 real qualities that you need to make sure you're interviewing for. And I think you hit them. It's like, there's a book called it's not worth reading. You get it from the title. It's called the No A-hole Rule. That's literally a book that's popular. And I'm like, okay, first of all, make sure you don't have any a-holes that you're hiring. Okay, because nobody wants to work with them. Number two, how's their resilience and grit? Are they gonna whine, or are they just gonna find solutions? Okay. And the third is positivity. Like, can they be a positive person that can go with the flow and have fun? Like, to me, it's like if you can find people like that in your culture, you can win. That I agree with everything you're saying there.
Yeah, it's been a big learning curve. I think over the last 13 years, it's been a very big learning curve to get to this point. And we're not always right. I mean, sometimes somebody interviews so great and they've got the qualifications, you get them behind the desk and start interacting with people. And the reality is they don't really have the knowledge that they said they did, or they are hot-headed. In a world of women in construction, a man that's super hot-headed is very intimidating to a lot of women.
Yeah.
And me, I don't tolerate that whatsoever. It's one thing to get angry or frustrated about a project or about something going on, or your materials didn't make it that day, and you vocalize that and you're pissed off being the guys. It's another thing to raise your voice and be angry and sort of project it out in more personal ways. So I have to, when I'm looking at bringing other men on into this world, I really have to take a look at that and make sure that we've got the right people and that they can deal with a woman being their boss. That's a whole other interesting scenario that I have to watch out for.
When you're interviewing people and evaluating candidates, are there any particular questions or exercises or things you take them through to help identify potential red flags or issues?
Yeah, so again, I don't do most of the interviewing anymore, but what my team does, they actually ask to have them explain the work they've done in the past in detail. They ask them to do some equations depending on the job that they're coming in for. It's kind of basically those kind of questions and seeing how they react to the question and if they can actually answer it appropriately with the right answer. And not that there's only one answer to everything, but if they still get to the same answer at the end of the day, then it's about that process. But, I've been considering, as we've been growing, where I pull in some of those personal development type programs where they have to do a test and then it comes back. And if it says it's a fit, if that says they're a fit, then I may be doing that here pretty soon to try to eliminate some of the more one-on-one conversations in the hiring process.
Yeah.
So there's various ways to get it done.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. We, behavioral questions like you're doing. One of the tricks that, like, it's not a trick, but we call it the threat of a reference check, which is like reference checking. And sometimes what we'll do is we'll have them set the reference check up for us so that we can then have the conversations. Because that's another one of those filters. It's like, set up these reference checks for us. And that's going to tell us a lot right there if they're able to do that.
Ooh, I like that. I've never thought of that.
Yeah.
Because we do the reference check. We talk to them and say, we're going to be checking your references. Is there anything we need to know? And most of our work is high security clearance work. So, I have to know, if you've had a felony 20 years ago, I got to know because you won't pass these tests if you did. That's how far back they go type thing. So,
of course.
But yeah, I like that.
I also find including the DISC behavioral assessment is super helpful too, just because it can really identify, okay, I have this particular role and I know in this role, you need to have these attributes typically. And if your DISC assessment comes back and says that you fit here and it's not a match, okay, well, that's not, doesn't mean you're excluded 100%, but it gives me an idea that maybe this isn't a good fit,
And that's what I was looking for is that DISC. Earlier when I was talking about it, but it was DISC that I'm considering doing going forward.
Yeah, we use that. That's really helpful.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah. We talk a lot about, execution, accountability, as you've grown and as businesses scale, sometimes that becomes a challenge. How do you approach that at KOR Building Group? Do you have specific systems in place that you guys use for accountability and execution?
Yeah, we definitely do. Initially, when we were just more mom and pop size,
Yeah.
we didn't have any kind of process and procedures and systems in place. But we went through, gosh, it's been 3 years. About 3 years ago, we got hit with like 12 projects at the airport, all starting within days of each other, one after the other. And they averaged about 2 months per project. And we had nothing in place to stay organized, to keep the morale up. It was total chaos. And we got the work done, but we had some damage, in terms of, we had to work with our relationship with that group because we were all over the board. My people out there were all over the board. And without systems and the process and procedures in place, you lose money because there's no efficiency. So about 3 years ago, I implemented, I'm sure you're familiar with it, Traction, Intact, or not Intact, but Traction and the EOS program. So I brought on a EOS implementer, and we've been doing that for like 2 years now. And it's totally helped improve communication between myself and my executive team. And then in that, because we're friends, we've known each other. They've been with me 7, 8, 9 years.
Right.
So for me to discipline anybody, or for me to say, hey, you really got to do this different, and you really F this up, or that is not easy to do when you have a friendship. So bringing in and implementing Traction was really a saving grace, because we pretty much just talk straight with each other. If somebody's got a bad attitude, I call them out, and usually if I have a bad attitude, they just don't come through the door. So and something's going on, so they leave me alone.
I think the power, that's awesome that you implemented and used the implementer to put EOS in the business. We found that that's always super helpful with all the businesses I've had. We had an independent third party that would do the same thing. They would lead some of our meetings. They would help with strategic planning. And it's, again, having that like independent third party that, helps you to get through some really tough conversations. And we always talk about too, that it's about attacking the problem, not the person. So, hey, Jane Doe may be having an issue or they didn't perform. If we're having the tough conversation, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you missed the mark here. Let's figure out how to fix it. Right. And so those systems really help. Those rhythms and systems really help to get to that issue and not have people get upset.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, one of the things that I found once we've gone through the Traction program, being able to talk straight to whoever's running the project as an example, somebody of authority, and just say, hey, it's not about you. It's talking about the problem. Let's fix it. But at the end of the day, you want to call them in and say, hey, we need to, you did this, you created this because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. What do we need to do to support you to be better? And that's the approach that I have in this office and training the minds here, because we got some older people here that are set in their ways in a lot of ways. And so getting them to look at communication differently, it's been interesting.
How is it getting those older people on board with running a system of accountability in your business? How'd that go? Is it working? Is it hard?
It's interesting.
Yeah. We know the feeling.
Well, yeah, the good news is because they've been with me for so long, they understand we need to grow, and they know that they need to change. Knowing it, saying it is one thing, doing it is the other. And so instead of it taking, you can teach a 3-year-old, how to drink out of a straw, but in 1 or 2, this is how you do it. You cannot do that with somebody that's set in their ways. Sometimes it can take months to actually get to the place you want them to be. So
have you lost anybody through the process because they're like, I'm not going to be involved in holding myself accountable?
Absolutely.
That's the best part is because those people self-select out when they don't want the accountability in the structure.
And we've not only lost people, but we've learned to identify the ones that say that we thought would work rather quickly, that they're not going to work, and be able to let them go sooner than later, because sometimes it'd take us months to figure that out. And we just be like, oh, well, let's just try, because we were letting the emotions make that kind of a decision. And now it's like, no, gotta go. Figure it out, gotta go. Get it, they have to go, and it's not a good fit. And so then the team takes it over.
I think sometimes it's giving the people the tools, right? When you need them to level up, whether it's in communication or accountability or execution, also giving them the tools that they might not have had before. How do you approach that within the organization, with, the continued education, continued learning and development of your people?
Well, I go back to when I first hire somebody, they get the book Traction.
Yeah.
That they have to read, mandatory reading. And then they also get another book by George Headley. Here, I can't even think of the name of the book. I actually have it on the shelf over here. But I give them that book because it's about construction. It's about construction management. It's about the way that, as the owner, how I look at things and what I'm looking for, to help that person understand their role better. And it pretty much, that book speaks to how I operate. So I start with that. Here's what's expected. And then we have our office manager. She wears a few hats. She's my executive assistant. She probably knows me the best and what's going to work or not work for me. So she has hard conversations with new people as well, just to level them up. This is, how you want to play in the sandbox here. So she'll have some of those kind of conversations. And then if there's any continuing ed, such as maybe some type of certification course or whatever, I will pay for that. I'll let them pay for it first, and then if they finish the course, then I'll pay for it. So I try to encourage that.
Yeah.
Great.
As we talk about that, right? People want to know that they're being invested in and that they're growing and that they've got a path. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we're not quite, as large as a Penta. They're big here. Martin Harris is big here. McCarthy, Mortensen McCarthy, they partner and they build stadiums. Penta Hunt, they build convention centers and stadiums, or arenas, I should say. But we don't have their financial capacity because we're still small and boutique-ish.
Yeah.
So it does put some limits. So it does take a certain kind of person that would want to work in a smaller organization like this and work with us to grow.
Yeah, makes sense. I like what you said there, Andrew. Like, people, once you invest in people, what I've learned is that our best people they want the investment into themselves. And then when we show it to them, not only do they feel appreciated, but it drives retention because we're showing them that we're going to help them get to where they want to go. And that's super important.
Yeah, that brings up to that point. I hired a young lady here to be a project coordinator. And she had more knowledge than a PC. She was close to being a project manager. But I needed to fill her out and just kind of see what her capability was. And I don't know, somewhere about a year ago, I let go of somebody that was our PM, and I was in the process of hiring another project manager, and she came to me and said, would you give me a chance to be the project manager? And I went, and I didn't hire her, so my staff did. So I said, well, get me your resume, let me take a look at what you know. And so I did that, and then I brought her back in and inquired more about her. And ultimately I said, okay, we're going to give you a shot. And so we gave her an increase. I let her be. I said, this is on a trial basis, 90 days. And she's still learning her PM role. She's very good, and she's been heading up my Google projects. She heads up all my Google. She represents my company at Google on their campus every day now. And
that's amazing.
Yes.
Great story.
it was really great to see her evolve. And I mean, she's still evolving. So it's. I don't know that she'll ever stop, but she has a lot to learn, and but she's doing a great job now, and Google loves her. So we're pretty happy about that.
Well, that's the thing. You want to hire people that have that hunger, that ambition, that drive, right? Hard to find.
And then recognize there could be an opportunity for both. For me, having her represent us, and I'm not opposed to having a man represent. I'm not I've got plenty of men in this company, believe me. But I was happy that it was her, because I think I watched her grow, and I watched her appreciation for giving the opportunity. That's really pretty cool. So she appreciates as much as I do.
I bet. Absolutely. Well, looking ahead for what's next for KOR Building, and what's the a big opportunity you're excited about, or challenge standing in the way?
Well, I've been working, I do a lot of the business development. And so when I say I've been working, it's about the business development, and I negotiate all my contracts. I'm kind of, sometimes I work with my attorney, sometimes I don't need to. I had an attorney he thought I had a legal degree at some point. So, I'm pretty good at my contracts, but, that being said, I'm working on a substantial contract for Las Vegas to represent a client here that has about 60 locations that all need to be upgraded, remodeled, or raise and rebuild. So I've been working with the state and the local governments to get the entitlement process done and help them with that. I've been developing since I was 15 years old, so I've got quite a bit of that background and know a lot of people. And then we were just informed yesterday that my presence, KOR's presence in the northern part of the state, as well as in a couple other states, is being requested to do a lot of major work. So I mentioned names, but I'm not allowed to. But it's big work. It's not. It's a long-term agreement. So my goal is to have long-term clients instead of bidding every public works project out there. But that's work we do. But I've redirected my staff to focus on these type of projects versus public works.
That's incredible. Congrats.
It's good. I got a quick follow-up. I know you got another question, Andrew. Are you feeling any of the ripple effect of the fires, the homes that were destroyed here in Los Angeles? Has that, are you getting any pull? Are you seeing the industry being pulled into California?
I think the industry was already moving and migrating this way. And when I say industry, I'm actually referencing, the Hollywood campus that they're going to build, and there's two of them, not one. And so that was already in the works. But I'll tell you what I have seen. I started a high-end home division, and my oldest son runs that. And we've got about 4 houses. They're like 10 to 14,000 square feet each. And so he's designed them, and we broke ground on one a couple months ago. I have had more influx of potential buyers for these homes than we've seen all year. And they were on a pre-sale, but now we're probably close to closing on one of them here in about 2 months. Yeah, I mean, to think of the fires in the Pacific Palisades and all that it's just devastating what happened. So they got to go somewhere.
It's awful. Yeah. Well, when we talked to a lot of entrepreneurs on the show, and we always like to learn from not just the successes, but also the mistakes. And we say the landmines people have stepped on. When you think back over the years, is there a particular leadership mistake that hit the hardest that you can think of that you could share? What would that be? If you could go back, how would you handle it differently?
I think what comes to mind because there's so many mistakes. I mean, they're just, um, in the beginning days, I made decisions more with emotion than logic, and financially it hurt me pretty good. So I outgrew that pretty quickly. But it doesn't mean I didn't make that decision again. Like I've done it a couple times, and I'm like, oh, sometimes I'm like, Tommy, what the heck? Why did you do this? Having that conversation with myself. But a lot of it is really just the decision-making process on whether to go forward with a contract or not, and the pain. Like we had a couple projects, and after I signed the contracts and we were getting ready to start, my team found a $300,000 mistake on one of them. There was no way I could recoup it. No way whatsoever, because I had already signed the contract and knew. So I chose to go forward with it and figure out how to take care of it. And there's ways that, you can knock that price tag down, that mistake price tag. But at the end of the day, when it comes to principles and your integrity and having a quality name out there, that reputation, that was one of the best decisions I made, even though it hurt me financially. So, I'm still going to make mistakes, and sometimes it's usually with new hires, because I use that more than I do my logic. So that's why I said, you guys are doing this, I'm not doing it anymore. So
That's a good one. And you're right. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to eat that mistake, and it's the best in the long run.
yeah.
Those are the challenge. That's why we're entrepreneurs and other people aren't, because those are the type of decisions that you have to make, which are very difficult. And most people don't want that pressure, but thank goodness for people like us, the entrepreneurial CEOs, that want it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I can operate any differently. I couldn't be an employee, that's for sure. Like I don't know. It never worked for me when I was. So this is what I can do, what I do best.
It's really interesting, because I've asked a bunch of people on the show about that. And some people say, like, it just never, being an employee, being a W-2 was never even a thought for me. I just always knew I was going to have my own business. And it's just, so yeah, it's like in their DNA, right? It's part of who they are, and it was never an option.
Yeah, I have 5 sisters, and one of them, her and her husband have been real estate brokers, in the sense it's their own little company. But they do about 20 million in revenue a year with the homes that they sell. That's pretty significant for this valley. But outside of that, the rest of my sisters, they all work for someone else. And sometimes I look at it and think, why couldn't you have that mindset? Why couldn't you do that, Beck? It would have been easier, because there's sleepless nights, and there's a lot of them, and the stress levels can be really, really crazy. And especially getting older, it affects you differently. It affects me differently. The stress does. So, yeah.
Come on, Rebecca. Life would be boring. Life would be boring without this.
Yes, it would. I would agree.
You mentioned the decision-making process and making the hard decisions. Sometimes being a CEO or a business owner can be super lonely, right? And you feel like you're on an island by yourself. How do you work with, or are you in a peer group? There's all sorts of different ones, or do you have people that you keep in touch with to bounce ideas off? How do you approach that?
Well, twofold. A lot of the work that I'm doing, again, being high security clearance, there's not a lot of people I can talk to. Even a close friend, even that confidant, that we all have one at least. But I do have a coach, like a business coach, and she is more, not so much about business as much as keeping my head straight to do the business. Yeah. So I do have her. She's not in the States. She's in Canada, actually. So I've worked with her extensively the last couple of years, just because we were growing and the stress was pretty high. And I was like, I keep screwing up. How do I fix it? How do I change behavior to be better and not screw up again. So it was more of an internal dialogue with myself. And so I do have that. And then I have a core group of guys. They're all contractors. They're really big contractors. And I've been blessed to be in their presence. They're like billion-dollar companies. And so about every quarter we go to a dinner, and it's just the four of us. There's no one else is allowed. And I get to pick their brain. And they pick mine for, just because they're dealing with smaller contractors in their organization. So it's kind of a win-win. So that's about it. But it is lonely at times. And you really need to talk to somebody to get it out. I just learned not to do that.
But I think it's awesome. You've got those two paths, the business coach and that group that you have dinner with once a quarter. I imagine that's incredibly helpful.
It is. I like the fact I can pick up the phone to these people. Not a lot of people are in their sphere, so I'm fortunate and blessed to be in their sphere.
Yeah. And one more question that we ask everybody on the show: if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice about running the business, what would that be?
Well, in my case, I would say learn the financials. Instead of learning on the job like I did, learn the ins and outs of the financial requirements to operate a company. I couldn't stress that enough. And like my grandkids, they're like, what should I do for college? And I'm like, do business and do financials. Just learn how to, because you can go anywhere with that knowledge. You can be part of any company. You can run your own company, but without it, you kind of learn it with the mistakes, how I made the mistakes. And so to me, it's all about black and white. It's all about the numbers, and the numbers tell you everything. Yeah. So that's probably my biggest advice.
And that's the best answer I've heard so far.
Yep.
That's the best, because entrepreneurs, the biggest mistake they make is they have no idea how to read their financial statements.
Yeah, you got cash flows, you got WIP schedules, you've got forecasts. Those are things that are all dealing with your numbers. And then it incorporates sales, it incorporates productivity. And if you're not producing, you're really going to be hurting a few months later. So, it's just learning how all those little segments have a piece to the whole to be better. And that's something I would highly recommend somebody learn.
That's really good advice.
Balance sheet, cash flow.
Really good advice.
Gotta get them all.
Well, Rebecca, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing your time with us and your background and your experiences. Before we wrap up, where can our listeners go to learn more about the KOR Building Group?
KORBG.com.
All right.
KORBG.com.
Well, perfect. Thank you again, Rebecca, and everybody that's listening. Thank you. And we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Stay focused.
Absolutely.